I am Stephanie Nina Pitsirilos, and I am going to read you an excerpt from my short story collection, Event Horizon, Stories of Note Turning Back, published by Janus Point Press, my imprint, and with art by an array of amazing artists. And the story that I'm going to read from is Orteez Funeral Home, story by me. Opening illustration is by Anton Oxnuk of Magnus Arts, and story art is by Aaron Guzman. And here's Anton's artwork. We're going to start mid-story. Something's wrong with your son, you know. Evangeline announced quite suddenly, quite heretically, out of nowhere one day. We were in the mines. She was cutting away at slabs of rocks like it was bread she was slicing, whereas I was hammering away crumbs. Yeah, so that's a no-go, Evangeline. Like, the sun is perfect. Why would you say that? I knew she said sun with small letters. No, I did the calculations. What math is needed to know that that's like the binding thing that gives us life? You stupid. She said it stoop-id. Emphasis on the stoop, emphasizing just how low my IQ was and how many zeros occupied my head. There's too much radiation. How miserable do you have to be to question the sun? Blood. At this point, the level manager balks at me from the booth because, unlike Evangeline, I can't hammer rocks and hold a blasphemous conversation at the same time. But they didn't say nothing to Evangeline, though, because by then it was evident how her worth was immeasurable. But here's a guess. She could easily do the work of 15 of us combined. Still, I wasn't done. I'd take the dock and pay and continued arguing with her. Big proclamation coming from a newcomer. It's not like I had planet pride or turf war juice. I just couldn't fathom how someone who just dropped from the sky could be so sure of anything. Like when I bought her dried flowers one day. A real nice girl gesture. I tell her they're from a planet with flowers that help people forget shit. Because by then I figure this was the source of her problem, not amnesia. What'd she say back? No such thing can exist. Then, a fucking professor speech. We are our data. Scrub it, and its imprint will still be there. Okay, maybe a lazy professor speech, or, oh no, wait. What do you call that? A philosopher. Okay, the flowers were a symbolic gesture, and that was the point, or its placebo point, because those bouquets were sold with legends of some fellas who took a wrong turn somewhere in their space travels and arrived down here with stories. Truth was, indeed, those flowers never worked on anyone here. And if you did the math on whether these were really those flowers, those dudes would have had to have arrived with 20 cargo ships of tightly packed bouquets. They arrived on tiny crafts, because so many of those flowers were sold everywhere and for so long. Ultimately, one of the jumpers did fess up that the flowers worked like medicine only if you were standing on their origin planet when you used them. Something about star alignments and whatnot. Still, they looked pretty. Pretty can make you forget. Look at Evangeline. Tell me you don't forget everything when you see her. What do you want, Evangeline? I ask her in my one direct attempt to show her my heart. My reality affirmed, she answers me. What the fuck did that mean? Points for trying at least? I ask her with pouting lips, flowers in hand. What does she say? What does she say? No points. I'd rather die in truth than live on lies. I tell her, there's no fun in that, Evangeline, yeesh. Half of us is circuits and metal. What does that make us then? What does she say? What does Evangeline say that makes us? Lies. Ask Evangeline if she missed home, she'd say no. Ask her if she remembered it, she'd say enough not to miss it. The only thing she did seem to care about, still in an antagonistic way, but a sign of life at least, was her fixation on the sun. It seems both there and not there, she commented on this again, the second time she trespassed into heretics as we passed an Orteez funeral home. Actually, it was the third time we passed an Orteez funeral home when she said something, when she realized there wasn't just one Orteez, there was one every 10 or 15 blocks. I was halfway down the street when I realized that she wasn't by my side anymore. I panicked, thinking I'd lost her so soon. But when I turned around, I see her there, staring at the display window. This was the same Orteez funeral home where I go to her viewing. I walk over and see her reading an ad. Add on Crystal Palace to your transition packet so your loved ones can wish you goodbye in the privacy of the tower with San Ramon. Behind the ad was the full-bodied floating soul of a pot-bellied man with a horseshoe as his bottom half. A now permanent 5 o'clock shadow on his face. His eyes were closed. Such a spectacle, Evangeline snorted. She became quiet. She raised her hand to the crystal glass and let her fingers rest there. Then she looked up. I couldn't touch her through the crystal glass, just as she couldn't really touch the man in the display window. They weren't really there. But I could do the same gesture. When my fingers met this crystal, I hear chimes ring out from inside the black rocks. Then I see some lines of light run through Evangeline's body like a scan, making me feel, for a moment, that she was still alive. I sit down on a small rock in the room, which I soon realized was supposed to be a seat formed in a Calabi wow manifold shape. That was all pretty fancy for Orteez. Evangeline had asked me, hand on the display window, what the sky ladder was for. That's what we call the elevator. I tell her that's where the dead are sent up to be rocketed into space and into the sun. I tell her that if she's looking to make a career change to mortician, no way she'd be hired, as her body was too useful for mining. Still, I tell her how the thrusters of the coffin go off once it reaches the exosphere and shoots straight for the sun, for the person's transition. How, when it's close enough to the sun, the coffin opens so that you can embrace the sun in your bodily form, unboxed. Why the sun? She asked me. It was like asking me why 1 + 1 = 2. To give back to what gives to us. I feel real smart saying this, like I finally can teach Evangeline something. She asked me to explain. Shit. I told her, well, see again, how do you explain something you just know because it's what you were always told and the logic makes sense to you? To give us life, the sun needs something back. Otherwise, it evaporates. To keep it alive, like it keeps us alive, we gotta feed it. She don't say nothing about this. For some reason, she jumps the convo back to the image of the soul floating in the display case, but first asking one more question about a detail I had left out. And this, she asked, pointing to the tower. I realized I had forgotten about the other part of Orteez funeral home, the viewer. Oh, okay, so each home has a viewing tower where the telescopes are. The telescopes have special crystal lenses that can see the surface of the sun, where souls live for eternity in their transition once their data has been extracted. San Ramon makes sure of this. Anyone can view you at a funeral home, and not just when you transition. They can see you forever. Isn't that lovely? To always be remembered, to always exist to somebody, to know that your image can be pulled up, your image can conjure feelings, can be something real to someone, give them joy, pleasure, tears. I was on a high. I felt I could finally bring Evangeline close to me with this insight, that my world had something wonderful to offer her. Instead, she stayed true to whoever she was. I don't believe in magic, Nephrim. Illusions? Yes.
Let's go further. Let's never stop.